What's up, everyone? Welcome into a special edition of Dodger Heads presented by DodgerBlue.com. I'm joined today by Andrew Rotondi, who is the co-host of the Bronx Pinstripe Show, and this is kind of a collaborative episode that's going to live in both places as the Dodgers face the Yankees in New York this weekend. Andrew, thanks for joining us. We were joking just before this. This is a more fun episode, I think, than a year ago because now we both have teams who are fantastic. The Yankees are actually better than the Dodgers this time around.
This is probably the biggest regular season series at Yankee Stadium since before the pandemic.
Wow.
It's been a while. I know tickets are in high demand at Yankee Stadium. We have a ticket rep because we've done events at Yankee Stadium over the years, and this was rivaling ALCS prices.
No way.
Yes, that's how expensive and how in demand this series is. Dodgers. Oh, I mean, between Ohtani coming in, Yamamoto, the fact that it's the Dodgers, it's a big one.
Now, is that like one of my first questions is going to be like on the ground level, on the street level, like, is there a buzz about this series because of how good the Yankees are, because it's the like, I mean, I know it's early June, so that's why I'm always like, it's early June. We're not talking about an October series, but is this like a huge story in New York City?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, a huge story in New York City. I know among Yankee fans, this has been like a circled series for the entire year. And yeah, it is only June, but the Yankees are one of the best teams in baseball. The Dodgers have been one of the best teams in baseball for a decade and are again this year. So yeah, it's a big series. If the Yankees were hovering around 500, it would not be as huge of a weekend. Now, the one thing that's kind of like a potential damper is Soto. I don't know if you followed this. Yeah. Soto came out of last night's game. The Yankees are notorious for mishandling injuries and not being forthcoming with information. And apparently he was feeling something in his left forearm for a week or maybe more. Jeez. But you look at his numbers over the last week and he's hitting like 360 with like over 1,000 OPS. So you're like, well, is he hurt? I mean, he came out of the game and Soto plays pretty much every single day. So man, if he doesn't play this weekend, that's going to put a little bit of a damper on it because you want to see Soto, you want to see Judge, you want to see Ohtani, you want to see Betts and Freeman and all the superstars. Like that's why it's a cool series, because basically you could amass an all-star team between these two rosters that will rival the rest of the league.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. First of all, I think if you just took the best players from the Dodgers and Yankees, first of all, you'd have trouble picking on the rotation side of things. Bullpen we're talking about two of the best bullpens, two of the best offenses, and two of the best pitching staffs. On the Soto front, I mean, I imagine there hasn't been much. Is there any information that's come out this morning, kind of the day after the game, as to whether he's expected to play at all this weekend or day to day or any of that?
We're probably going to find out sometime soon. When they announce lineup card, if he's in there, great. If he's not, then I'm sure Boone will speak to the media to say what's going on, because Soto, I mean, you saw him with San Diego. He plays every day. There was like 2 instances earlier this year where he was banged up in the middle of the game, and then he's back out there the next inning, and it like nothing ever happened. Yeah. So, and that's, for someone like Judge, who we were just talking before we recorded, last year in LA, that was sort of the negative turning point for the Yankee season, because Judge makes that unreal catch against the wall, which I still want to sue the Dodgers ownership for not having padding down there. Busts his toe, and the Yankee season just went down the drain from there. I mean, you lost the MVP for a multi-month stretch, and they weren't able to recover. Was Judge's injury the only reason that team was mediocre? No, but it didn't help. Yeah. And so without Soto in the lineup, the Yankees lineup is not as balanced. It's not as deep. He has been better than advertised. He really has been. Every single at bat is so competitive. I love the engagement he has with the pitchers. If a pitcher beats him, he gives him a nice wink and a nod. Don't do that again, because I'm going to get you next time. And he's just brought a real balance to the Yankees lineup. The past few years, they have not had good left-handed hitting, which for Yankee Stadium is a problem because of the short porch. Ever since Babe Ruth, having a power left-handed bat is kind of important. And Soto's presence there, and Verdugo to a bit too, just giving better lefty-righty balance. And then when you look at the top of the Yankees lineup this year, Volpe's been great. Then you've had Soto and Judge, who Judge had a rough first couple of weeks, but he's been great since. Verdugo has been hitting cleanup a good amount, believe it or not, to give that lefty-righty balance. And Stanton has been much better this year than he was last year as well. So that's a top 5 that's better than the Yankees have had in the past few years.
Yeah, I want to talk just out of the gates here about what I imagine is like one of the best sports debates that could be had, especially this weekend, which is Aaron Judge and Juan Soto as the 1-2 punch for the Yankees versus Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani as the 1-2 punch for the Dodgers. I'll be honest, as a Dodgers guy, if you look at like the numbers that we are seeing in 2024, there's not a super strong case to be made for Betts and Ohtani, who are 5th and 7th in wins above replacement, while Judge and Soto are 1 and 2 in some order, regardless of where you look. So, I mean, from your perspective, like when you think about that as a Yankees fan, but also a guy who's probably following baseball at a national level as well, Judge and Soto versus Betts and Ohtani. Give me your thoughts.
Are we including Ohtani, the pitcher?
That's a fair question because right now he's not pitching. So I would say for now, because we're in 2024, we're talking about this weekend, we're not including Ohtani, the pitcher.
So then you've got to go Soto and Judge. If you're talking about Ohtani, the Cy Young caliber pitcher and MVP caliber hitter, then obviously he's basically 3 players and it's an unfair argument. But I've compared all season Soto and Judge to Manny and Ortiz. And for any Yankees fans, those 2 words, Manny and Ortiz, give you shivers, okay? Because that was such a dynamic duo that you had to think, oh crap, those guys are up next inning. We cannot let anybody get on base ahead of them. And that's, I think, how opposing teams need to approach the Yankees lineup right now. If Soto's coming up and Judge is coming up next inning, you can't let Volpe get on base. And Volpe's been taking advantage of the fact that pitchers are attacking him, and he's having a really good season. And between what Soto and Judge have been doing, either just getting on base, moving the line down, or literally single-handedly winning the game. Like, I don't know if you saw the game in San Francisco, looked lost on Sunday for the Yankees, and a 9th inning rally and Soto hits a 2-run home run to give him the lead. It's just, I can count on, there's 5 or more moments like that in the season already, and it's early June for Juan Soto.
Yeah. No, and again, I would love to sit here and make a compelling case for Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani, and you could make a compelling case for them clearly being better than every other 1-2 punch in Major League Baseball by like a wide margin. In 2024, the sample size we're looking at, there's no case. Again, they're 5th and 7th in WAR, and yet that's like behind 1 and 2 in the Yankees. So that'll be a fun battle. But again, whether or not Soto plays, that could be a huge advantage. I was looking just on the wins above replacement charts on Fangraphs. It's kind of funny how these 2 teams stack up. Yankees have 1 and 2. Dodgers have 5 and 7. Yankees have 8th. That's Volpe. Will Smith is 9th. Freddie Freeman is 22nd. Teoscar Hernandez is 47th. And then Alex Verdugo is 54th. So you've got like a cluster. I mean, we're talking about 6 guys in this series that are in the top 9 in wins above replacement in all of Major League Baseball. And then if you keep going, you've got 9 guys in basically the top 55 in just these 2 lineups alone.
Yep,
I'm just
that's what I said.
Offensive.
You could build an all-star roster with just those top 9 guys between the 2. Yeah, no, the Yankees have not had as complete a position player roster in a while. It's been a while.
Yeah. It'll be a fun matchup on the offensive side. And I think the depth, the the Yankees are 1st in runs scored. Dodgers are 3rd. The Dodgers lineup the problem has been Max Muncy went out about a month ago, and basically it's become a top 4 of the lineup. Teoscar Hernandez massively slumping, had a good night last night for the Dodgers, so hopefully he's bouncing back a little. The Dodgers' issues have been, since Muncy went out, the 6 through 9 spots in the lineup. It's a bunch of guys that they threw a bunch of darts, hoping that 2 or 3 of these guys would be even just league average or close to league average. They have been well below league average. So if you want to talk about the Dodgers 3rd in runs scored, if you ask a Dodgers fan, hey, how do you feel about the lineup? They'd all give you negativity right from the get-go. I'm curious on the Yankees side, just looking, hey, 1st in runs scored, a bunch of guys at the top. Is there depth to that Yankees lineup that the Dodgers pitchers have to kind of take seriously down in the 7, 8, 9 hole, or is there a little bit of a gap?
Well, I mean, it's certainly not as good as the top
Sure.
of the lineup, as is every lineup. And believe it or not, the names in the Yankees lineup are better than they've been performing. Rizzo's having a terrible year. You would look at Rizzo's name in the lineup, and if you're not following, you're like, oh, that's not an easy out. But he has been an easy out this year. I think his on-base percentage is now at 295. He's been really, really bad. Gleyber Torres, I think, is hot over the past 2 weeks. hitting like 280 with an 850 OPS. That's hot for him.
Yeah.
But he's been bad up until that point in the season. Those are two names specifically that are just that. They're names that you wouldn't think are easy outs. For large chunks of the season this year have been easy outs. The Yankees catching tandem of Austin Wells and Jose Trevino has been a bit of a mixed bag. Trevino's had big moments, but largely been, pretty bad offensively. And then Wells, on the other hand, you look at his StatCast numbers and his expected numbers are all really good, but his actual numbers suck. So you're like, well, how long are we going to buy into these expected numbers when he's still hitting 200? So that's been a lack of production. But I mean, there's only a handful of teams in Major League Baseball that are getting good offensive production out of their catcher. You guys are one of them. Like it's hard to do. And when you find it, count your lucky stars because it's really hard to find. LeMahieu just came back recently. He's not been producing yet, but that's another guy I lump in with Glaber and Rizzo, where solid name. Yeah. So on any given night, it might be hard to go through Glaber, DJ, and Rizzo, or it might be easy to go through those three guys.
Yeah, I would say somewhat similar. Like you're going to see a name like Chris Taylor, who many people might be familiar with just because he's had some postseason moments. I mean, last I checked, he was hitting under 100 for the season. Not a small sample size. So bad. That is bad. You said like, hey, 850 is hot for Torres. I'm like, geez Louise, we'd kill for 650 down at the bottom of our lineup the way that these guys have been hitting. There's some young guys. Andy Pages is a rookie who's kind of had an up and down, like came on really, really strong, had a bit of a slump, has been okay lately. Miguel Vargas, another prospect who failed last year, but has been hitting the ball a little bit better since coming up. And then you've got Gavin Lux, who's sort of, the Dodgers fans' least favorite player right now because he was good at one point. He used to be a top prospect. He's been pretty bad offensively this year. He's also the reason Mookie Betts is playing shortstop and not second base. Because
I was going to ask you about that because I know Betts was an infielder way back when he came up with Boston. I believe he was the second baseman. He got moved to the outfield. How has that transition been?
It's been fascinating because they came into the spring saying, hey, Mookie is going to play second base, which he's played. He dabbled a little bit last year. And, there were all sorts of speculation. Is it, this is a position that's going to like sort of age him a little bit better without the wear and tear of right field. He was still winning Gold Gloves in right field, but the defensive numbers had diminished a little bit. He was probably closer to above average than he was elite, all this stuff. And Gavin Lux was top prospect, came up as a shortstop. We're going to see if this works. He was dreadful in the spring, like couldn't make a throw. Like, 40% of his throws were complete misses to first base, to the point that with like 8 days before the Korean series, Dave Roberts came out and said, hey, Mookie Betts is going to be our everyday shortstop. And that's it. And it was like, okay, he's played some shortstop. How's this going to go? I would say the good news is this: Gavin Lux moving to second base has actually been above average to elite defensively, depending on what number. So he has been way better than expected at second. Mookie has been a little bit of a roller coaster. There were stretches where you're like, oh man, he's actually really good. He makes a lot of errors still. I think with Mookie, he's probably about league average, and that's probably fine, which is kind of remarkable that they moved a right fielder to shortstop and he was just like passable at shortstop. So when it comes to like making the case for those two, Betts and Ohtani versus Soto and Judge, like I think the only line of argument I could possibly make is, do you know what Mookie Betts is doing defensively? Like he's just playing the hardest position defensively in the whole sport and doing it passively while also being a top 5 offensive player. So that would be the case, but that's kind of the scouting report on the Dodgers defensively.
It is wild because the old cliche is you can move out, you can't move in the baseball field. And so the fact that even though he was an infielder, it was a long time ago, he's been an established outfielder for, is it a decade at this point, or close to 8+ years? So that's pretty crazy. Yeah. I mean, we're not talking about sticking an old guy at first base.
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk pitching here. My question is, do the Dodgers actually have a slight pitching advantage in this series? And what I mean by that is not pitching staff as a whole. It's that the Dodgers actually have their 3 best guys on the mound, whereas the Yankees, 2 of their 3 best guys. So Heel and Cortez, Cody Poteet, those are the 3 pitchers for the Yankees, not in that order. The fact that the Yankees, by the way, have one of the best pitching staffs in Major League Baseball without Garrett Cole is insane.
Bring that up. I was going to bring that up.
And, it's wild. Like the Dodgers have a list of guys that aren't pitching right now, but none of them, I mean, aside from Ohtani, who's not expected back at any point this year, is even sniffing what Garrett Cole is. But again, in this series, it's Luis Heel, Nestor Cortez, Cody Poteet versus Glasnow, Yamamoto, and Stone, who Stone may be a name people aren't familiar with former top prospect, struggled last year, has been awesome for the last month and a half for the Dodgers, giving them length, getting better and better as he's developed a slider. So let's talk about Heel, because he's kind of the biggest storyline. Guys that Dodger fans probably aren't overly familiar with. They're going to hear like, oh, rookie of the year favorite, but he's also like the favorite to start the All-Star game in the American League. So we're not talking about a good rookie. We're talking about one of the best pitchers in baseball so far.
The only reason he was in the rotation to start the season is because Garrett Cole got injured. He was acquired from the Minnesota Twins, I think in 2019. He had Tommy John surgery. He pitched briefly last year. He's always been a stuff guy, always with control problems in the minor leagues. How many times have we heard that, where this guy has electric stuff but can't control the control it in the strike zone, so he walks too many guys. And there's still been points where he does get wild and walks too many people, but people can't hit him. They cannot get hits off of him. I forget, I don't know off the top of my head what his hits per 9 are, but it's ridiculous to the point where he's giving up a couple hits a game and that's it. So it doesn't matter if he walks 3 because he only gave up 1 hit. So his fastball has been one of the best in baseball. If you look at just fastball value, he has been working to develop his off-speed secondary stuff. There's still times where he'll hang a slider in the middle of the plate, but it still gets swung and missed at because the hitter is preparing for his fastball, which has been so electric that you can get away with mediocre off-speed stuff. So you'll see a changeup that used to be 15 years ago a guy's good fastball at about 93, 94 miles an hour, and you'll see an off-speed slider, and those are his 3 pitches. But he's been unbelievable, like to the point where every time he's pitching, I think, is this going to be the start that the wheels fall off here? And May was a historic month, not just for a rookie pitcher, but for any Yankees pitcher. That's how good he was in May. But as far as the pitching matchups go, like Glasnow, has the capability to match.
That could be the All-Star. That could be the All-Star game starting matchup.
Yeah, I'm curious to see Stone. I mean, obviously, I want to watch Yamamoto, but I'm curious to see Stone. Nestor Cortez has been really, really good at Yankee Stadium and pretty average on the road. He's a drastic home road splits guy, but I do like him at Yankee Stadium. He's never going to get crushed. Watch him go give up 7 runs in 2 innings, but it just seems like he's always going to keep the team in the game. And from Nestor Cortez, which realistically he's a back of the rotation guy, that's what he needs to be. And Potit's filling in for right now an injured Clark Schmidt, but he's just holding down the fort until Garrett Cole comes back, which probably 2 more rehab starts.
Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, Heel stuff, like when I look at his numbers, you mentioned the hits. So he's thrown 69 in the 3rd innings. He's allowed 30 hits this season. Like that's
insane.
The stupidest number.
It's
but
insane.
He has more walks than hits, which is a terrible sounding stat until you realize that his whip is still under 1. The fact that he's walking like 4.5 guys per 9 and still has a whip under 1 is crazy. 85 strikeouts. So again, him versus Glasnow is going to be electric. Stone, I was just looking up some of his numbers. So his last 7 starts, he's averaging 6+ innings pitched. He's allowed 1 or 0 earned runs in 6 of those 7 starts. Whoa. So he's been really good. Fastball up high, upper mid 90s. Changeup's really, really nasty. That was the pitch that everyone said, like, it might be the best changeup in baseball kind of a pitch. But then for whatever reason, it wasn't getting swing and miss. It wasn't getting any sort of results. This year, he's got a slider that he's developed that is like awesome. So the changeup is actually like his 4th most used pitch. But when he throws it, nobody seems to be able to hit it. So again, the matchups in this one, Yamamoto versus Potit today, Stone versus Cortez, and then Glasnow versus Heel, which again, that could be the All-Star game matchup, which will be fun. So it's nice to see 2 teams going at it and knowing that you're getting, 5 of the 6 best pitchers. Well, I guess that are sort of healthy, Cole being the 7th, in there. It's not like we're like, hey, Dodgers, Yankees, and it's going to be James Paxton versus, fill in the blank. So that's nice.
And just like also to reiterate how good Heel has been going into the month of May, when we're starting to plan, okay, when Garrett Cole comes back, because by the start of May, we understood his injury is not going to be season ending. That was obviously a concern when it happened in spring training, but okay, he's going to come back in mid to late June. Heel's probably the odd man out there. Wow. He's a rookie. He's been up and down in April, and then he just didn't didn't give up anything in May. And it's to the point where, well, now you can't take him out of the rotation. And the conversation was then, okay, is it going to be Nestor Cortez coming out? Is it going to be Clark Schmidt coming out? And the decision, like always happens in baseball, someone always gets injured when a guy is coming back. The decision was made for them. I would have liked to see what decision they would have made. My gut tells me it would have been Clark Schmidt just because he had been sort of trending down. But it would have been interesting to see when Cole comes back. And the fact that the Yankees pitching staff, I did not know how they were going to get through the first half of the season without Garrett Cole.
Yeah.
Every single starter, Carlos Rodon, who we didn't talk about, not going to pitch, was terrible last year, injured last year, has been pretty good. He hasn't been great. He's been pretty good. It's just been everyone has stepped up without Garrett Cole.
Yeah. Just looking at his May numbers, 38 and 2/3 innings with a .70 ERA. For him. So, it's like, who's going to fill in for Cole? It's like, that's better. That's way better than you could have. That's better than Garrett Cole being in your rotation, which is crazy.
Unbelievable.
Okay. Bullpen. Speaking of things that are very, very good for both of these teams, the bullpen, once again, Yankees are second in bullpen ERA. The Dodgers are third. Clay Holmes has kind of cemented himself as a back end reliever that, at least from the box score. I know closers sometimes the box score can be misleading.
I tell you, some of those he could have blown opening day if Juan Soto didn't throw a guy out at home plate. He ended up blowing a game in Arizona at the first week of the season, but it was a ghost runner, so he didn't get charged with an earned run. And then there was a couple of other narrow blown saves that he didn't give up. I think he gave up his first run like 3 weeks ago, but his expected ERA was like 4.5. So listen, he's at times been unhittable, but then other times it's a complete adventure when he's on the mound.
Well, come on, you need that. That's like
no.
I love that. I love hearing about that in a closer.
I miss Mariano Rivera more than you can know. Okay,
I believe it. I
was just spoiled my entire life.
I'm like a 1.32 ERA. Like, this guy seems awesome, and it's like every team, if you're like looking at their closer. I shouldn't say every team, most teams, you're like, hey, this guy has a good ERA. It's like, well, let me tell you, it was like the Kenley Jansen experience for so long in LA. People are like, oh, this guy's a borderline Hall of Famer. It's like, yeah, he can't hold guys on, guys steal. You can tell within 3 pitches whether or not he's going to be a disaster. So I love to hear that. One thing I'll say about the Dodgers bullpen, and this will be interesting. They did not get any length from their starting pitchers in either of the last 2 games coming into this series. Wow. Including their closer, Evan Phillips, in like a 7-run game, coming in and throwing 30 pitches while also having his worst outing of the year, kind of coming back a little bit still from injury. So I'll just be curious to see how they deploy the bullpen. Yamamoto, you hope, can get you like 6 innings. They're still giving him extra rest. And then Stone, like I said, has been giving them 6+ innings. But just something to keep an eye on is that the Dodgers bullpen is not coming in at full strength, I would say, heavily used coming into this one.
That's good to know. I mean, and the Yankees bullpen, the results have been there, but bullpen is the number one need for this team, not only in depth, but also just adding, I think, a more high-end arm. They got Tommy Kahnle back. You guys know Tommy Kahnle coming back from injury. So that's been a help. Holmes, like we just talked about Holmes, Luke Weaver's been a nice standout, believe it or not, for them. But man, if Dennis Santana or Caleb Ferguson or Victor Gonzalez are in the game,
all Dodgers. You just named three more former Dodgers in the Yankees bullpen.
When those guys are in the game, bad things are usually happening.
I was going to ask. I mean, Victor Gonzalez, Caleb Ferguson, these are prominent guys formerly from the Dodgers. Dennis Santana, I believe, came up with the Dodgers, was signed as an international free agent. So there you go. You named 6 relievers, and 4 of them are former Dodgers. Ferguson, when he got moved, that was kind of an interesting move because there was division. I was in the camp of I actually really liked Ferguson when he was in LA, but I know it has not been awesome for him or Victor Gonzalez is the vibe I get.
I'm looking at Ferguson's numbers right now: 5.30 ERA, 4.64 FIP. But I think honestly, you probably agree with me from someone who watches every game. I go more about feel when a guy's in the game from a bullpen than like, oh, look at his ERA, look at his for bullpen arms. How do I feel when that guy's coming into the game? Yeah, I don't feel good about a lot of those guys when they come into the game, even when the results are there. I still feel good largely with Clay Holmes. I have become feeling good with Luke Weaver and Tommy Kahnle. I would lump into the good. The rest of the guys, though, I don't feel great when they come into the game, and so that's why I say when the Yankees are going to be active at the deadline, they need to acquire probably 2 bullpen arms, just not only to add depth, but also to just get some more reliable arms, because everyone's like jokes, well, you're never going to have a good 6th inning guy because he wouldn't be a 6th inning guy. Well, you can't have the worst one in the league if you're going to win a World Series.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Dodgers bullpen's interesting. I mentioned Phillips. He's awesome. Dodgers fans, he's a closer that I think people feel great about. Again, he just did 30 pitches and got lit up in a blowout, so that wasn't awesome. Blake Treinen is back. If Blake Treinen is healthy, which he is right now, he's like always one of the best relievers in Major League Baseball. You just cross your fingers on how long he's going to stay healthy. Alex Vesia is a lefty that's been really, really good for the Dodgers. And then Daniel Hudson, who's like a million years old, but seems to have been settled down into like a groove a little bit. So I'd say uniquely right now, the Dodgers have 4 arms at the back of the bullpen that I feel pretty decent about. The irony being that like every other guy in the bullpen is probably somebody who will be DFA'd within the next 2 weeks as they just play lottery roulette with those guys in the back. They have Yarborough, who's kind of a bulk soft tossing lefty. So he's a fun one, but
Yarborough from the Rays, right? Back. He was.
Yes. Yeah. So he's bounced around, and look, I couldn't explain to you why it works, but I just know that for some reason, it does work.
There always seems to be a handful of relievers at the deadline that get moved. These hired guns that come in. I mean, we saw it last year with the Rangers acquiring Chapman, but like there will be 2 or 3 relievers that get moved to contending teams at the deadline.
All right, last question here, and then we'll get out of here. Series X Factor. Is there a guy that maybe has had a hot couple of weeks? Maybe it's a narrative thing, but just somebody from the Yankees side of things that you're looking at and saying, hey, this is a guy who could make a big difference in this series?
Well, I was going to say Luis Gil from the pitching side, but we already talked about him at length. Can I say, does Juan Soto play?
That's fair.
Does Juan Soto play? Because that's a massive X factor here. But for someone else, I'll say Volpe, because Volpe's been, aside from like a 2.5-3 week slump in April, he's been really good. He's been everything the Yankees fans hoped he was going to be as a rookie, that we saw flashes of, but wasn't able to show consistency. I think he has a 32 game on base streak.
Wow.
Getting on base ahead of Soto and Judge has been an X factor in why they've driven in so many runs. So Volpe's my guy.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, look, he's a guy that if you were to say to Dodgers fans, like, hey, who are the names that you're expecting to crush you? I think they'd be surprised to hear that Volpe is literally 1 spot behind Shohei Ohtani in wins above replacement this year and 1 spot ahead of Will Smith. So that goes to show you how good he's been. We joked right before coming on, the Verdugo Dodgers thing will always not be funny, not be funny. Like it'll just be, he had a rough little exit here, was part of the Mookie Betts trade. So we forever love Alex Verdugo.
Rough exit in Boston too. He's kind of exited right. So
totally.
I know he's not, I would be surprised if he's back on the Yankees next year, because he's a free agent. And if they're going to sign an outfielder free agent, it better be Juan Soto. But he's been good. He's been very solid. They had the worst left field in baseball last year, and this year they've had a good left field.
Yeah, I mean, for Dodgers fans' perspective, Verdugo from a wins above replacement perspective is basically what Teoscar Hernandez has been for the Dodgers this year, and that's actually the guy I'm going to go with as my X factor. I talk about the Dodgers lineup. They've got 4 absolute dudes at the top of the lineup. We haven't even mentioned Freddie Freeman, who started to heat up a little bit over the last couple of weeks. Heat up from being like the 15th best hitter in baseball to being like one of the 10 best. Yeah. Trust me, man. The mention people freak out if guy, how it is. If Soto has a bad 2 weeks, it's like the sky gets falling. So, but Teoscar was in a rut, and he's the 5th guy with no Muncy. So he's the guy that like Ohtani and Freeman and Smith are getting on in front of. He had a stretch going into last night where he was like 3 for his last 29, and he was actually 0 for his last 19 with runners in scoring position. Last night, he goes 3 for 5. He's got a double. He's got a home run. He scores 3 times. So Hernandez is going to be my X factor because he has the capacity to be one of the best RBI guys in Major League Baseball. They paid him a bunch of money. We've seen it happen. He just needs to bust out of the streak because we know not to expect anything from 6, 7, 8, and 9 in the Dodgers lineup right now, which means the 5th guy better do his job in cleaning up the 4 guys that got on base in front of him.
Well, what I just learned is that when the 8th hitter tonight gets a hit in the 8th inning to give the Dodgers the lead, I'm going to be extra mad.
There you go. Yes, you should. You should. If Chris Taylor gets a hit at any point this series, you should be mad about that. Gavin Lux, if he does anything significant, you should be mad about that. That would be from the Dodgers fan perspective, the things we have no confidence actually happening.
Before we get out of here, because this is going to be going on both of our podcasts. So for the Bronx Pinstripes audience, I'm sure your audience is sick of talking. How long did the Ohtani translator gambling story last as like front page headlines in LA?
I would say it probably wasn't that long. It was probably 7 to 10 days. I mean, because it just felt like the whole thing, it was like from when we heard about it to when there was like an explanation that I would describe as unbiasedly as possible, at least as plausible. And then Dodgers fans just being like, all right, well, that sounds like it could be true. And we want to believe that is true. So let's just move on. And then, of course, waiting a month. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, MLB and cleared the investigation. He's going to turn himself in and plead guilty. Like when he started turning himself in, which happened, not that long after. And the initial story, I think that was a piece of it. I imagine Yankees fans, there's a large portion of Yankees fans that think this is a massive cover up and that Shohei Ohtani illegally bet on baseball. Is this accurate?
No, not necessarily. I'm an Ohtani fan. Like I would rather watch Ohtani play than not play baseball. Right. I just had a hard time objectively believing he had no knowledge of what was going on. But again, that's just from my perspective. So do I think Ohtani's placing bets with some bookie on games? Probably not. But he wasn't. I don't see how he's completely oblivious to everything going on. But who knows?
Here's the best. Like here's the argument that I think in my mind carries the most weight, and you and your listeners can decide whether or not you want to believe this. As I've like watched this whole thing play out and read, you can imagine absolutely everything that has come out on this subject. I think the role that an interpreter plays in the life of a player who comes from a different country and who speaks minimal amounts of the language is actually kind of astonishing, because when this came out, it was like, there's no way he wouldn't know if this money disappeared. And then all of a sudden you just see like, well, look at this rock star and look at this athlete and the business manager blows this money. And then you've got Ohtani, who like this guy was the go-between in every financial decision he ever made, in every relationship he ever had. It's actually crazy. It's actually crazy. And so you kind of realize that he's looking at this guy like, well, this is not just my interpreter. He's my best friend.
Yeah.
And we're going everywhere together. And he's telling me we're good. And he's telling me what this person is allegedly saying to me, that kind of a thing. I mean, even the craziest story was when Ippei is like talking to the Dodgers clubhouse the day that this is all going to happen. And Ohtani's just standing there like, yeah, this isn't a big deal. Like, I don't understand. And then all of a sudden, like, he starts to get rumblings of like what is actually being said. And that's when it's like, wait a minute, what did you just tell them? Did you just tell them that like I was paying off what? Like, not, and it was like, it got all the way to that point before Ohtani realized what was happening. And I was like, that's either the biggest lie and the craziest lie of the whole thing, or just like the moment that encapsulates this whole story better than anything else.
Ah, man, to be so good at something that you literally don't have to care about anything else in life except hitting and throwing a baseball. Wow.
To be so lucky, right? Well, hey, Andrew,
he is that good. So
yes, yes. Hey, I appreciate this. This was fun to do. Let our folks know where they can find you if they want to track along, especially this series. Listen to some post-game content, whatever you guys have coming.
Yep. Well, Bronx Pinstripes, the Bronx Pinstripe Show. This is, believe it or not, our 10th season doing the podcast. We'll have an episode out on Monday after the series, after the Sunday night baseball game. So you can tune in if the Dodgers have a good weekend and you want to tune in and hear us be angry, then have fun doing that.
Love it. Well, we actually do a Friday Night Live post-game show. So if any Yankee fans want to hop on and talk, and hey, Andrew, open invite. If you want to join us tonight to break down anything, you're more than welcome. It's actually late afternoon for us over here. It's like a 6:30 p.m., 7 p.m. post-game show. So Dodger Blue 1958 is the YouTube page, or you can find the DodgerHeads podcast on Apple, Spotify, and Google. So again, Andrew, thanks for doing this. This has been a lot of fun. Thanks everybody watching either on the Bronx Pinstripe feed or the DodgerHeads feed. We greatly appreciate you. I won't end the show as I normally do with which go Dodgers, but let's just hope we have a good series. So we appreciate everybody joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Jeff. Maybe a preview. Oh, sorry.